Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon or good morning. My name is Marwa and I work with Education USA in the West Bank. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is our second session of Getting Ready to US Study series, and we will have 4 representatives from 4 different colleges and universities to discuss different topics. So first, I will give the floor to my colleagues, Education USA advisors, Lana and Rawan from Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Marwa. Glad to be here with all of you today, and thank you for taking the time to joining us in this event. With you, Ruwan Atiya, Education Advisor in Abu Dhabi. And my colleague Lana is with us as well, and she's the Education Advisor in Dubai and the Northern Emirates. On behalf of Education USA in 9 countries and representative from different university, Johnson & Wales University, Creighton University, University of Illinois, and Sinclair Community College, we welcome you to our session today. So today, I will need to go to the other slide. Thank you, Marwa. Today, you will get excellent information and topics and informative topics about studying in the US. It will be discussed by our US HEIs to give you all a deep insight about studying in the US, ranging from culture shock and how to deal with it, important soft skills such as time management and communication skills, which are key for success, setting courses online, and much more. And then you will have the chance to ask any question you may have, and hopefully we will be able to answer all your questions. I will hand it over to my colleague Lana from Dubai.
Thank you, Rawan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lana Ayash. I'm the Education USA Advisor for Dubai, like Rawan said. Very happy to be with all of you today. Today's agenda includes first of all, welcoming remarks by Melissa Duchamp. And Melissa is the Regional Education USA Advisor, Coordinator for the MENA region. The discussion today, the first part of the session, will talk about culture shock and what skills do you need in order to cope and adjust during that. And it will also talk about adjusting to campus environment, using time management skills in order to ensure that you have a successful education journey. Then that will be followed by question and answer session facilitated by our colleagues in Egypt and Morocco. The second part will be about communication with your professors and faculty, and also selecting courses, whether it's online, hybrid, or in person. That also will be followed by question and answer session, and this time it will be facilitated by our colleagues in Lebanon and Jordan. The last part of the presentation will be concluding remarks by Melissa Duchamp again. We would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to join us in the upcoming session, which will be on Wednesday, the 29th, July 29th, and that will be from 10 to 11:30 Eastern time. The upcoming session will be a great opportunity for you to also hear from our US higher education representatives, who will talk about supporting support services for international students, how you can maintain a legal visa status, and we'll also talk about on-campus employment, curricular practical training, or what many of you hear as CPT, as well as optional practical training referred to often as OPT. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Melissa Duchamp. And Melissa, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all, Marwa, Lana, and Rawan, for kicking us off today. We want to thank you all for joining us for part 2 of our 3-part series on getting ready for U.S. study. This is our opportunity to really give you insights directly from U.S. university representatives about the different things to think about and prepare for as you undertake your studies. So first of all, congratulations on your acceptance for those of you that have already gone through the application process and got those exciting letters of acceptance. And for those that are tuning in to learn a little bit more as you start the process, as you think about U.S. study for your career and educational journey, then we welcome you also to be able to think about the different topics covered today and ask questions. We're here to answer questions. One of the things I do want to emphasize from the beginning, you've heard the various topics that will be addressed today. So obviously, time management, culture shock, hybrid models, the campus environment, all these different topics. That's the focus for today's session. We know that there remains a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions regarding whether or not classes are going to be online, if they're going to be hybrid, if they're going to be in person. A lot of those decisions are still being made. It's a very fluid situation. With the pandemic, things change from day to day. So, you know, we thank you for still, you know, really being engaged in this process of learning and also being patient. I think all of us are learning through this whole time. So we know there are also a lot of questions regarding the visas. And so that's not something we have answers for, but know that we are also keeping close tabs on consular service messages, updates, so that that can be shared on all the various Education USA social media channels. But again, even on our main page, you can find all the relevant links to access up-to-date information from all of those departments. So again, thank you for joining us today. I want to thank and welcome our speakers who I'm about to turn it over to. It's great to see familiar faces and some names that I've engaged with over email. So we thank you for your participation today and all of the wonderful tips, insights that you're going to share with our students. So now I will turn it over to Wesley, who actually is from my hometown in Rhode Island. So over to you, Wesley.
I did not know that.
Yes, my house is in Rhode Island, and yes, I actually took classes there. So yeah, it's great.
Terrific, terrific. Well, thank you so much, and good morning from Providence, Rhode Island, the smallest state in the United States, the ocean state in the United States. And so I think to some of you, it's a good afternoon, and to some of you, it's a good evening. My name is Wes Roy. I am the Director of International Student Services at Johnson & Wales University and the Academic Chair of our English Language and Culture Academy. I always like to start this presentation out with a bit of sharing about myself and my own culture shock, because we all go through culture shock at some point in our lives. I had 2 big culture shocks myself. The first one was my freshman year of college, dealing with roommates, being away from my family, feeding myself, laundry, that was a big one, time management, calling using the very, very expensive phone system back then before cell phones, if you can imagine that. And my first month was a really big cell phone bill. My second time I had culture shock was when I went abroad. I did study abroad my junior year, and I was completely amazed by how culture shocked I was from anything from the food, the culture, transportation, different languages, the currency, measurement systems, the weather, the list goes on and on and on. So for those of you thinking of the United States and doing freshman year and abroad, there's lots of feelings and there's lots of emotions. But I'm so glad that you're here so we can talk about that in greater detail. So over the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to talk about the idea of culture shock, the stages of culture shock, and most importantly, some tips and some hints on how to help you deal with culture shock, as the vast majority of you are setting your eyes for the United States, which is very exciting. So let's talk about what actually culture shock is. And it's a really good question, because we hear that term used on a fairly regular basis. But what does it actually mean? It's an emotion that most people will feel at some point in their lives. And in fact, they might feel it many times in their lives, depending on how much you've traveled before, how much you plan on traveling, and how much you're exposed to different cultures, places, and people. but not to worry, because it's one of the absolute most common emotions that we all experience at some point in our lives. The dictionary explains it as a noun and the feeling of disorientation experienced by someone who is suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. All right, well, let's unpack that a little bit more. What does it look like, maybe? So for the next slide, it might look like a fish out of water. And so whenever someone travels overseas or to a new place, it feels like you're a fish out of water. Like a fish, we've been swimming in our own culture our whole lives. And when we suddenly leave the water, and we'll have the next slide, then we're gonna feel like we're a fish out of water, literally. So you might see this as a common image throughout this presentation, but that's really what it looks like and feels like, especially when I did my own study abroad for the first time and going to college for the first time. Well, all kidding aside, the feelings and emotions that go along with culture shock, if unprepared, can really be difficult to manage and leave you feeling frustrated and upset. And you might even wonder, did I make the right choice by going abroad? Which is why I'm so glad that you chose to come to this Education USA session today, so we can talk about this in greater detail. So let's first take a quick look and understand, what is culture? Culture is a mix of many different things, anything from our traditions, religion, food, political system, education, values, the list goes on and on. But essentially, this is what makes up your world, and it makes you uniquely you. So let's think about then what causes the shock for the next slide. So what is that actually causes the shock? Typically, shock is broken down into three different areas. The first, information overload, role shifting, and personal. And this could be attributed to anything from overload of information and the speed of which the information is coming at you. It can often lead to that feeling of overload. Your role in a new world, from relationships, your own identity, responsibilities, and new demands of being a student living on your own for the first time in a different country, that also can lead to this feeling. And last is the personal component to all of this. As you experience the ups and downs of the many emotions, to being energized, to exhausted all at the same time, to being excited and sad, it can be confusing, and you could feel lost in your new world and in your new role. So what does this actually look like? And this was kind of fun, trying to find the right images to identify, what does culture shock look like? Well, we've got anything from food, getting used to American fast food and finding food that you like. You might miss your own food and your mom and grandma's home cooking and dad's home cooking. The food might taste different, the culinary experience. The weather, in many parts of the United States, our northern regions, you could have very cold, snowy, below freezing temperatures, and that certainly could lead to a shock. And the summer times could be really humid. And so that weather, we get a lot of different kinds of weather in the United States. So not being prepared for that can leave you shocked. Roommates, maybe this is the first time in your life that you're having a roommate and sharing space and quiet hours and understanding, when can we do things and when can we not do things. Measurements and weights, understanding what you're used to for measuring measurements in your own country could be different in the United States. Clothing, fashion could be possibly different as well. And the list really goes on and on and on. I even have a picture of American football, right? And you might be thinking of football as soccer, as what we call it in your home country. Anything from transportation, shopping, diversity in classrooms, relationships with professors, and asking questions in an academic culture can all really help shift things. So it's important, the important thing here is to emphasize that all of this is completely normal, and it's expected of all of our students when they first come to college. Whether you're from a different country, culture, state, or region, going away to college, let alone anywhere, naturally can be a shock to your system. So let's remember our fish out of water. I think that's the second time we've seen it. So let's get a better concept of the stages of culture shock. I think that's the most important thing. Notice the ups and downs here of the chart. As we have on our vertical side, we're measuring happiness. On our horizontal side, we're measuring time, and thus we're measuring happiness over time. What's interesting about this concept is that it can happen all over the course of a few weeks, a few months, or in some cases, even a whole year, all of which are completely normal. We start with the high of the honeymoon phase, and we quickly descend down into the frustration phase. We adjust slightly, and then eventually over time, we find ourselves back up to the high of acceptance. Honeymoon phase. So let's unpack this a little bit more. What does it look like? Well, we got a happy face, right? That's your original happy face. That's how you measure happiness, and that's what you're used to happiness looking like. And this really often starts to build right before your big trip to the United States or to anywhere, and ultimately when you first step off the airplane. I distinctively remember for my own feelings of stepping onto my college campus, I was so excited, or my first time off the airplane in an international destination. I was really, really excited about that. And what's amazing is that it's that sense of accomplishment. I made it. I went through all these processes. I got my documents. I got my visa. I got my airplane. I said goodbye to my family, and now you're there. So it's exciting. Everyone there is exciting. It's a new place. There's new sights and sounds and smells. It's what you wanted it to be. But unfortunately, my friends, this does not last. It does go into the next phase, which is the frustration phase. So we got a sad phase here. Soon the euphoria of your new world starts to wear off a bit, and you start to feel irritated at your new surroundings. Things start to seem like they're going wrong, and you're beginning to question what you're feeling, and you're wondering if what you're feeling is different from your culture is actually inferior to your new culture. This plants the seeds of possible resentment. It could also be the small things: losing your keys, missing the bus, not being able to fully understand the language. I remember thinking in my international destination, where is the ketchup? I like ketchup on my French fries, and everyone's eating their French fries with mayonnaise. This is weird. I am frustrated. It's easy at this stage to even second guess yourself and question, was this the right decision for me? Did I make a right choice by coming here? You might even feel homesick and wonder about that. But fear not, my friends, this too shall pass into the next phase, which is called the adjustment phase. And this is not necessarily a happy or sad phase. Instead, it's really when those frustrations begin to relax a bit as you feel more familiar and comfortable with your new culture. Things become a little bit easier. You begin to establish perhaps your true friends, your true group, and your community begins to find its roots. And I remember thinking, for my French fry story, that the mayonnaise isn't so bad. Maybe I don't miss my ketchup as much, but I liked both. The last phase is the acceptance phase. And you'll see here that this brings you back to a happier place of greater comfort. Notice it's not the same smiley face when you saw in the honeymoon phase, but instead it's a different smiley face as you are now different and you're a changed person, but in a really good way. What's important about this is to know that this stage of acceptance, it doesn't necessarily mean that the new cultures or new environments are completely understood. In fact, they might still be somewhat misunderstood, but it does signify that complete understanding isn't necessarily to function and thrive in a new surrounding. You're feeling okay, and you can manage in both places. So this is where I get to say congratulations to you all, because you're now bicultural and you can handle it. You can handle your home culture, your new culture in the United States or wherever you travel, and you get a certificate of achievement for that for sure. So let's think about how to make this a little bit easier on ourselves, right? So now we have a better understanding of what culture shock is and the many different characteristics of each of the different phases. So you're going to be aware of this as it's happening, and it will happen to all of you. Here are a few tips and tricks and hints about how to manage your culture shock and ease your adjustment in the United States. One is remember your goal, know your goals. Remember why you came here and made that decision to travel overseas. Be kind to yourself. We're our own worst critics. We beat ourselves up, and it's easy to feel bad. So try to be kind to yourself. Take advantage of the experience of being here, and be aware of those distractions. Be mindful of social media. It's really easy with all the social media that we have with our smartphones to get distracted and be like, hey, what's going on with my friends in another culture or in another country or another school, and begin to find resentment through that. Be present where you are and be active where you are. Get out of your room, join clubs, join organizations, and be part of the campus community that's there to support you. And most importantly, be aware that this takes time. Everyone is on their own journey, and culture shock looks different for different people. Some people might smile through the whole thing and it's all good. Some people might not look so great, and they might actually have some sad days and sad times. So just be aware that everyone has their own journey. So I think this page is really important, and I want to pause here for a second because It's the page we need to remember about all the different support services that are available. One of the amazing things about the higher education structure in the United States is that there are a lot of resources that you get by choosing to come to the US. And really, it's important that you're understanding how to utilize those resources available to you. Most universities will set up robust international orientation programs when you arrive on campus with the intent of acclimating you to the various resources, offices, and supports available to you. These programs are designed to be both informative but also fun, and you might make some new friends along the way. Please make absolute every effort to attend these programs. They really are truly intended to help you and acclimate you to your campus community. Anything from academic support, the writing lab, the math lab, tutors, whatever it might be. It's called different things at different schools. Counseling center. Some of you might feel extreme homesickness or extreme sadness. This is okay. This is normal. Many of our students in the United States have some sort of counseling services set up, and we encourage all of our students to use them. The library is an amazing place to get help. Your resident assistant, which could be called different things at different schools, but basically like a big brother or a big sister who lives on the same floor as you in your residential hall, and they might be a year or two older than you, and so they can help you acclimate to the campus community. Remember the international office and all of your international advisors that are here to help give you more information. There's workshops, there's first-year seminars, there's clubs, there's organizations, there's friends. There are lots and lots of supports to help you acclimate to college, and it's very normal, and everyone's using them, so it's important to know what they look like at your campus community. So to summarize on the next page, we've talked about today the idea of culture shock. Anyone in any situation, they are truly a fish out of water. There's that fish again, and you're going to feel that culture shock. We talked about the stages of culture shock and what that looks like and all the different characteristics, and they all eventually pass. And then lastly, we talked about the tips and the hints on how to manage your culture shock. We learned how to manage the culture shock by using some of these techniques, and you'll be aware of them as they happen, so they will be less severe. On our next page. So in the end, my friends, if you can remember these few things about this presentation, you are not alone. By choosing to come to a college or university in the United States, you are joining a big family, a really big family of staff and faculty and other students and alumni, and they all want to see you supported. They all want to see you succeed and help you with your transition. Remember that everyone's on their own journey. Culture shock looks different for different people, so don't judge a book by its cover. They might be looking like they have a great time, but they might be in culture shock. So be aware of that it does truly look different for other people. And everything you're feeling is normal. Everyone goes through this at some point in your life. It will happen, but it passes. And you are now experts at culture shock, so you'll know how to manage it. And then enjoy your time overseas. These are going to be some of the most exciting years and exhilarating times in your life. So enjoy them. They go by quickly, but they are not to be missed and to be enjoyed. And that concludes the culture shock. I know we have some questions and answers later. I will next turn it over to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Van Carrion Stem. I am the Director of International Enrollment at Creighton University, which is located in Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha is right in the middle of the U.S., so we are one of the few landlocked states. So basically, if you're looking right at the U.S. and drop a pin right in the middle, you're probably going to be pretty close to Omaha. I'm excited to talk with you guys today. I've been working in international higher ed for 10 years now. So working with a lot of students like you who've decided that want to come to the US, you've been accepted to a university, and you're really trying to now prepare for what you're going to do. There's a lot to think about over the next couple of months. And in a normal year, it's already a lot to think about. This year with everything else, there's so many layers to it. At a previous institution, I actually was able to teach a class for first semester international students, really talked through adjusting to the campus culture, working on time management, and how to really be a successful college student. So I'm excited to share some of those tips with you. I only have a few minutes, so I'm basically going to try to fit an entire semester's worth of information down to a quick few minutes. So one of the biggest things, though, about coming to a university in the U.S., though, is that the culture of a U.S. university is very unique in that things are going to come at you very quickly. We are a very deadline-driven culture in the U.S., so you have to be prepared to really hit the ground running when it comes to both both your academics and, trying to get adjusted to the campus. So one of the things to remember is it's going to take time. You're not going to adjust overnight, but you're not going to be alone in this either. For any student who's coming to university, and this includes U.S. students as well, coming to college is a big adjustment. It's the first time that you're really going to be on your own. You don't have your parents there to make sure you have dinner ready or make sure you're studying, things like that. So you really have to start taking care of yourself and figuring out who you are and what's really important to you. But just remember, it's going to take some time. You're not going to figure everything out in a day. When you first arrive to university, there's a good chance that you're going to have an international student orientation, as well as possibly a freshman orientation, first year student orientation, or welcome week. It's very, very important that you go to all of these activities. As Wes was just talking about, one of the big things is that you'll get introduced to a lot of services that are available on your campus. So not only, knowing where the library is specifically, but all of the things that you can do in a library. So for example, many university libraries have upwards of 10 or more librarians that specialize in different fields. So getting to know that, in your history class, that there's a specific librarian that you can go to get help writing your paper and doing that research. So it goes beyond just, knowing where a physical building is and what their hours is, but really truly understanding how these offices are there to support you. It's also a great time to start meeting other students on campus. You will want to meet students who are outside of your specific major or program because it helps you really adjust to, campus life, getting to know other people, building your own network and friend circle. You could also meet older students who've been on campus for a while, can share with you some of their tips and tricks for getting around campus. So it's important to really engage in these activities and, also enjoy them. A lot of them also have free food, which is a lot of fun. You will come to very much appreciate free food on campus. As we all know, food really unites people. So like I said, it's a great way to really get to know your campus. Really start thinking about trying things that are outside of your comfort zone as well. So usually as part of orientation or welcome week, there's usually an activities fair where every different club and organization on campus will have a different table and you can go learn about it. So it's a great time that if you've ever thought about, getting involved in an environmental organization or joining the International Student Organization so you can share more about your culture and where you come from. This is a great time to start talking with them and learn about the different things that they do. When I was in my undergraduate university, this is how I came to know about one of our student athletic teams, and I actually joined an athletic team through this. And it was not something when I was in high school preparing for university that I ever thought I would do. It was such a cool opportunity. I met so many amazing people from across, just not the US, but also across the world who played this sport. It was a great time. And this is also how I got to know about our International Student Organization and then also started to get very involved with our international students. It's also, as I kind of will go back to a lot, a great way to, meet new people, especially, as you get involved in more clubs and organizations or, meet people in your dorm hall, you find people that, you can just say, hey, you want to go grab lunch or do you want to grab dinner? And you start, building a lot of your friendships that way. One of the things that I know is really awkward to do at first, can really help you make some interesting friendships within your dorm hall, is that leaving your bedroom door open, so that way when your neighbors are walking by, they can stop and say hi, ask to learn more about you. It's a great way to make some of, the closest friends you may make in your lifetime. So it's a little weird to kind of have your bedroom door open. You kind of have to make sure your room's a little clean and not, a complete mess. But a great way to meet those who live around you. Another thing to remember, and Wes talked about this as well in his last slide, is that you're not alone. A lot of the feelings that you're going to be going through and a lot of these adjustments, everybody is going to be going through. They may have a different way of going through it and a different way to show it. A lot of students get homesick, and it doesn't matter, if you are Dubai or Cairo or even, in the US. Going to university is tough. It's a very tough transition. And there are times where you are going to miss maybe your mom's home cooked food or your favorite shop to go to. But the best thing that you can do for yourself is to not just sit in your room alone. Is it, as you start making friends, start talking to them about it and learning what they're going through. Maybe you'll meet somebody who's able to make your mom's favorite dish that she makes. And, it's a great way to really kind of work through those feelings together with other people. And then another tip for really adjusting to the campus environment is making friends with older students who are in your major or program. They can be your best resource and really help you navigate your class process. So they can give you advice on the best classes to take, the best times to take classes, how to work with professors, and knowing exactly what you do in that professor's class to get that A. They can help you with tutoring, give you study tips. They can share some internships and on-campus jobs that they've had. It can really be some of the best resources and best support that you can have within your program as well. Go to the next slide. So time management. This is one of the toughest things, I think, for international students to really handle in the US. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are a very deadline-driven culture. So understanding that when a professor gives you a deadline for an assignment or a paper, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. And this is something that really takes practice in the US. Or another example is, if class starts at 8 a.m., you have to be there before 8 a.m., not 8:03, 8:10. It's really important that you are on time. This is something that takes practice and really learning about who you are. One of the cool things about most universities is that you get to pick your class schedule. So you have to really start thinking about what kind of person you are and how you're going to be most successful. So you really have to think, if I am a morning person, I really want to take that 8 a.m. class. Or if I'm not a morning person, maybe I should wait and take classes at 10 a.m. or in the afternoon. So really knowing, what you value in your class and your schedule to make sure you are going to be successful. If you want to try to be a morning person, maybe take a class around 8:30, 9 a.m. and try it out for a semester. But remember that you really have to be honest with yourself about what is going to work best for you. I talked about being involved on campus and getting to know those student organizations and clubs. One big thing I would say to be very careful about is make sure you don't sign up for every single student organization or club. They will email you nonstop and your email inbox will get cluttered. So be involved on campus, but don't get over involved. This also becomes important because you have to think, when you go to college, your first priority is your education and getting, those great grades, doing well in your program. And kind of student life is very important, but it kind of comes second to making sure that you're getting a good education. You want to make sure that, yes, you're involved so you can continue to work on your communication and leadership skills, as well as making friends across campus, but you don't want to be so involved to the point where you don't have time to do your homework, write your papers, study for those exams. So you really have to find that balance. And this really goes back to the first point of this part really takes practice and knowing yourself and understanding, how long it might take to study for classes. classes in the US, at university level, go very, very quickly, and there's a lot of expectations in class. So you might want to think about setting aside more time to study than you might think you should. I always tell students you'll get a better understanding once you hit that first exam every semester of each class to really know how much time it's going to take to really do well in that class and on those exams and papers. Use a calendar and schedule everything. I cannot say this enough or recommend this enough. If you don't write everything down and have everything in one place, you will forget something. So it's very important, and this is, you can use your calendar on your cell phone, you can use a physical planner and write everything down. Whatever system works best for you, make sure you use it. I know it looks funny to even say schedule your meals. In a second on the next slide, when we get there, I'll show you why this is important. It's also important, oh, hold on just a second. It's also important to schedule time for yourself. University can be very overwhelming between trying to juggle all of the things you need to do. So going to class, studying, having time for your friends, having time for organizations, if you have a job on campus, you have to make sure you're taking care of you. Mental health is very, very important. So maybe it's, picking an afternoon of the weekend and saying, I'm not doing anything except I'm going to sit here, make sure I call my parents, watch Netflix for a couple hours, whatever it is that you need to do to kind of de-stress and focus on yourself, make sure you schedule that in. But also remember, there's only 24 hours in the day. So as much as you want to do everything that's available at university, you're not going to be able to. You have to really decide what's going to be most important to you for both your education and your social life and personal life. And make sure you schedule it all in. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide. And I know that I initially tell students when we would do this activity in class, this seems a little, almost childish to have to write all of this out. Honestly, setting a schedule like this every semester when your classes change is going to help you so much to see where your time is actually going and how much time you really have to take care of yourself. So one of the cool things I talked about with picking your classes is that a lot of classes at the university level, one class may be offered several times throughout the day. So you get to really control your class schedule. So this is for somebody, for example, who really likes morning classes. So you can see 3 days a week, they're taking an 8 a.m. class, 2 days a week, then their class starts at around 10 a.m. They have a couple of evening classes. Honestly, I think I picked this off of a schedule that I had when I was at university because I was kind of a morning person. Really for me, it was I wanted to get my classes done in the morning. So I had my afternoons and evenings to work my campus job as well as study. So you also have to think not every class you take will be offered or be scheduled every day of the week. A lot of classes may be, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. Some classes are Tuesday, Thursday. Some classes are 4 days a week. So it's really nice that you could balance your schedule in that way. But as you can see here, I made sure to also schedule in those meals, especially breakfast. So I knew what time I had to be up in the morning to have enough time to grab coffee. I cannot function without coffee. So if you're one of those people as well, make sure you build in your coffee time to grab coffee and go to class. But also building in, study time, which is important that, when your friends text you and say, hey, let's go shopping, let's go watch a movie, let's, go for a walk or something, you can say, no, this is, one of the evenings this week that I only have to study and I really have this important test coming up at the end of the week, so I have to study. And then also making sure if you have an on-campus job, you're putting your hours in there. Because once again, back to the time management, it's important to be on time. In fact, really trying to be early for your job, for your classes, make the best impression. And then also scheduling in that self-care time. So as you can see on this schedule, and this was actually very typical of what I did in college. I said Saturdays were for me. It was my time that I was going to call my parents and catch them up on everything going on. I think I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but Netflix wasn't really a thing yet, but we did have cable in my room. So I would just watch whatever was on TV for a little while, or go for a walk, or go to the gym. It was important for me to have that time and that day off to really mentally prepare for the next week. Um, but as you can see as well, once you kind of get everything on paper, you don't have a lot of free time left once you get everything down. So especially I also scheduled in sleep, because sleep is very important. You don't want to be trying to go to, your classes when you've only slept for 2 or 3 hours. Um, so like I said, this seems a little, juvenile to do this, but it really every semester is a great way to plan and know what your time is going to look like, and how to make sure you're taking care of you and getting everything done that you need to. So with that, I think we're actually going to move into our first question and answer. Oh, I'm going to actually tell you a little bit about Creighton. I told you a little bit about myself already. So as I said, we're located in Omaha, Nebraska. We are a private institution. But really, like I said, you can read all the information here. But for us, what I think that we do well for our students, we have a very interesting diversity on our campus, and that over 80% of our students come from outside of our state. So I always tell my international students that you may be rooming with a US citizen, but there's a good chance that they're from California or the East Coast or Hawaii, but they're actually going to go through a lot of the same feelings that you're going to go through, which is nice, and it really brings a strong campus community to our campus. But we not only have an international orientation before our welcome week, we also have a required class for the first year for students, where it's like a freshman seminar, and you really get to know students from across campus, which is nice. It gives you another opportunity to meet faculty and students from outside your program to continue to build your network. And so we see from this class that students get to, work on their time management and investing together. And it's a great way for students to really kind of find their place at Creighton, which is really nice to see. Okay, now with that, I think we're going to turn it over to our first question and answer session.
Yes, so now I will hand it over to our Education USA advisor in Egypt, Hiba, and our Education USA advisor in Morocco, Yusur, to facilitate the Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you to our presenters for the very valuable information and the input. We had a few questions here on Zoom and also on Facebook, there is a few of them about applying to master degrees. What are the requirements, what are the steps, and an estimate of the total cost for a master degree. If one of you would like to respond to those.
Hi, this is Wes from Johnson & Wales. Can you repeat the question again a second time?
We actually got a few questions related to applying to a master degree. What are the requirements, what are the steps, and questions about the cost for graduate school.
Sure. That's a great question. There are thousands of universities in the United States, and so I think the journey oftentimes begins with our friends with Education USA and college search engines, and there's many of them. Of course, identifying if there's a region of the country that you prefer to be in. Obviously, what is your academic program? What is the standing or specialty of that academic program? Cost factors, admission standards and requirements. Every school has its own unique set of requirements. And so oftentimes really trying to narrow down that search is the first place to begin. Our friends at Education USA have lots of resources and lots of guidance they can help assist you with. But really the best information you can also get on the internet, and you can begin to research those institutions. And so if you've identified, I'll use my own state, for example, the state of Rhode Island, and you want a certain master's degree, we have many programs here in our state. If it's perhaps a larger region and you're open to different places to go in the country, you can begin to look for master's programs in that way as well. I think obviously right now there's so much going on with the ICE announcement, and understanding, is your school, is your proposed school perhaps, are they going to have an online program, or will they have a face-to-face program or a hybrid program? There are a lot of questions that our international education community is asking that we don't have necessarily answers just yet for. I would hope within the next week or two that there'll be more clarity, because I think there is a lot of confusion at this point. But again, begin that search process, start to list down some of those factors. Going to the college admissions website pages is obviously the best place to start in understanding the requirements. There are a lot of deadlines that my colleagues, we've been talking about. It's a very deadline-driven process for the most part. Most institutions have some sort of deadline to apply. Some have rolling, but most do have deadlines. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Can someone get stuck in the frustration phase for a period longer than normal? And does the university usually offer support to those students?
So that's a great question. I think for those who could not hear that, the question is, can someone get stuck in the frustration phase for a period longer than normal? And does the university offer support for these students? So that's a great question. We get that quite frequently. Yes, I think each of the different stages, you could go through all 4 stages in a matter of a month, 3 weeks. I've never seen it really less than that necessarily. It could also be over a period of a year or more, depending on just where that person is at and how much they're willing to kind of engage in their new environment. Anything is considered normal, whether that's 2 or 3 months stuck at the frustration stage. Maybe you're mixing a little bit of acceptance and frustration mixed together, or honeymoon, it becomes frustration. There's so many different scenarios. When we look at that presentation, we look at all those kind of tips and hints for how to navigate and manage that frustration stage. I think the most important thing is to first just be aware of it, right? It's going to happen. Let's use me for an example. Where was my ketchup? I wanted ketchup for my French fries, and all I could find was mayonnaise, and I was frustrated by that. But soon enough, it does pass eventually, and you get to try out new and different things. The best place to really begin is university counseling office. That is a really valuable and a very used office on campus. It's probably no surprise, most American students at some point will use university counseling services. We have these services in place to help assist people. Typically with international students, they tend to be a little bit shy, right? I think people equate counseling with mental health issues, and some of that gets mixed up in some of the semantics of all of these conversations. But really, when we think about a counseling services office, it's really someone who can listen to you, someone who can be a neutral party, someone who specializes in people who have culture shock or are stuck in a phase, and they will have ideas and hints to help move you out of that phase into the next phase, whether that's signing up for clubs and organizations, trying to make new friends, trying to do different things in your new community. I think all those things are important. So there are plenty of services that are available. There's anything from like a first-year seminar class, for example, or College 101, we might call it, but it's a program that's oftentimes a requirement for your degree program, but it basically introduces you to the concept of college. And American students need this just as much as anybody else will need this as well, because the idea of living with your family and having many parts of your life managed, to working and managing yourself independently, they're going to have some ideas. And we deal with this year after year and batch after batch of students. And so colleges become really good environments to help support you and to transition you from depending on others to depending on yourself and advocating. And that's probably the best thing I could give in terms of advice to international students is raise your hand, right? It's okay to raise your hand. We expect you to raise your hand. We want you to raise your hand. And I know in some cultures, questioning back a professor or questioning back a service may be seen as disrespectful. It might be seen as going against authority. In the United States, it's quite the opposite. We want people to ask those questions because we want to help you. We want to help transition you so that you're successful at our schools.
The one thing that I would add to that is don't forget that your faculty members are there to help you and support you as well. The role of a faculty member is not just to teach you that class, but they're there to really help you be successful as a student and once you graduate to be a successful alumnus as well. So make sure that, you know, if you are frustrated by a class, you're just not understanding the expectations or what's going on, reach out to that faculty member. They want to be there to support you. Most faculty members have set office hours, which are times that they're supposed to be available in their office where you can just go knock on the door and say, hi, I need help. I'm frustrated. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't understand what you're asking of me. Go talk to them. This is what they want to know. They want to be there to support you. And it kind of goes to everybody on campus as well, that we don't want you to be frustrated or get unmotivated or have, you know, questions. Come reach out to us. Don't be shy. If we don't know the answer, we will make sure to put you in touch with the person who does know the answer and who can support you. So make sure that you're not, you know, if you are in the frustrated phase or, you know, if you're having some issues, you know, making friends or fitting in, reach out to us. We want to be there to support you as well.
Thank you, Megan. Again, this is Yusuf from Education USA Morocco. We have a question about TOEFL versus IELTS. I guess the question is which one is required, or if they can both be provided as part of the application.
Most universities in the US will accept both the TOEFL or the IELTS. I think the biggest challenge right now is that due to COVID-19, a lot of these tests also, you know, not just TOEFL or IELTS, but also the SAT has been suspended because they don't want to have everybody in one room together taking these exams. So what I would also do right now is, as you're researching institutions that you might want to apply to, talk to those people who work in the admissions office to see what options you have if you're not able to physically take one of these exams. I know some of them are moving to online formats, which might a university may accept now, but there's also newer exams on the market, such as the Duolingo English test that a lot of universities are accepting, which you can also just take at home. So it's, you know, there's a lot of options right now with universities, but generally most universities at the base level will accept TOEFL or an IELTS, and we don't preference one over the other. It's really whatever you're able to take wherever you're living.
So thank you so much for the answer. I think now we have a question regarding on-campus jobs. And Radwan says, can you talk about on-campus jobs and how much do they afford? And are students limited to certain jobs or fields of work on campus?
Great question. So the first thing I'll say is make sure, I think they, on July 29th, there's the session that will talk specifically about campus jobs and CPT and OPT. So they'll probably give you a more detailed answer than what I'll give you now. On-campus jobs are great because they can help you earn enough money, usually for a lot of your pocket money. So pay for your mobile phone, to go shopping, to go out to eat, to go to the movies, things like that. They're generally not gonna bring you enough money to pay for like your tuition or fully for your living expenses. They're also great because it can help you be more connected to faculty members or to other staff on campus. And they're great for your resume and to continue to build your communication and leadership skills. Some of the things to think about is that your visa only allows you to work 20 hours a week on campus. So make sure you don't go over the 20 hours because that would not be good for your visa status. But honestly, I tell students, I personally don't recommend working more than sometimes like 12 hours a week because that's when it becomes very, very difficult to manage. You know, you're studying, you're going to classes, and having any sort of time to sleep and eat and all of those things when you start working a lot more than that. So be cognizant of what your schedule looks like. There are so many different types of on-campus jobs, though. You can do anything from helping in dining services to working in the library. My first campus job, when I started university, I was a chemistry student. My first job was cleaning the labs and cleaning all of the glassware that was used in all of the chemistry labs. So some jobs are not glamorous, but it was fun because I could listen to whatever music I wanted. So I just cranked up my favorite songs and powered through it. And it was kind of a nice way as well to meet more of the faculty in the chemistry department and get to know them. There's also jobs in athletics, other different departments, admissions office. So for example, like my office, we hire over 100 students a year to help with different things in admissions. So you have to look around. A lot of universities will have a central student job board that you can look at. But I think it's a great opportunity if you can work on campus to kind of, add it to your resume and work on some of those job skills.
Thank you, Megan. And Wesley, for answering the questions. We're going to have to move to the next presenters. Jess, I think, and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for being here. Good afternoon, good evening from Champaign, Illinois. I'm so excited to be presenting to you today on how to select the right courses and communicate with your faculty. So I started with this slide just to show you how complicated a curriculum could be. This is our electrical engineering curriculum listed here. And so it is important that you understand that it's not necessarily one class that you have to take that goes forward. There's lots of options and decisions to be made. And so the important thing to know is that you do need to work closely with your academic advisors. And so I wanted to start with this just to show you that it is a complex web. It's not a straightforward answer. You do have a lot of decisions to make. But if you want to move to the next slide, I have some advice on how you can select the right course. So you really need to work closely with your academic advisors. At every institution, you will be provided an academic advisor of some capacity. Some schools will allow you to pick the person you want to work with. Others may say, here's a group of 6 of them. It's a first come, first serve as you make an appointment. And so really the key is to develop a relationship with them. They are there to know the curriculum and the classes you need to take, to graduate on time, to explore other areas and interests. And so they're there to be your advocate. Many schools will also have a course explorer or catalog for upcoming courses. At Illinois, it is called a course explorer. It is definitely a place for you to go and really see what courses are available for students, what opportunities can you take each semester. Not all classes will be available every semester. So it is important to know that you may have to plan things in advance so that you can get the required courses you need. So you can plan ahead by looking at these documents that are provided by many institutions to see what types of options you will have. I think the other thing students forget to do is to have a balanced schedule. We want to make sure that you are not overworking yourself one semester and not doing much another semester. It's really about balance. Megan talked a lot about time management, and a lot of time management comes within your scheduling and your coursework you're taking as well. So there are different things in the United States in terms of the way your schedule is made up. So you have major required classes that all students would have to take to graduate with that major. But most institutions will also have general education requirements. And these are things that might be an English class or a language other than English, history, global perspectives, art, fine and applied arts, things like that. And so these really are topics that students have to pick between, but there may be several courses within that that you can pick to customize. And so you'll want to make sure you have a balance of all of these things. The other great thing is the flexibility of the United States curriculum. You are able to pick up a minor, which is usually like 30 credit hours, or a double major, which would mean 2 full focus areas. And so working with your advisor to select the courses that maybe overlap best between them, or provide you enough information or enough things that would give you interest in these areas. And so really working closely, I cannot stress it enough, is what you need to do with your academic advisor to pick the courses. You still have full autonomy and control over what classes you pick, and in many institutions, you actually will schedule things yourself. But the advisor is there to guide you along the way to make sure that you're going to stay on track or pick up the right classes that you need. Oftentimes, it can get overwhelming. So at the University of Illinois, we have over 6,000 courses offered every semester. That's a lot to pick between, and we understand that. And that's just one example. This is varying at different institutions, so there are a lot of options. Asking professors for course recommendations based on your interests might also be another great place for you to start, as they know different courses being offered, or they might have colleagues that can recommend classes to you. And so starting to use your network would really help you pick the courses that would be best for your interest areas as well as for your degree. You have a lot of resources in place at the universities that you may be attending, and they are there to help you succeed, I think, first and foremost. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. The courses really are the foundation of what your college experience is going to be. So it does make a difference if you enjoy the classes you're studying, or if you have concerns about them, that you talk through them before you pick those courses. So if we head to the next slide, I want to talk about some tips for how to communicate with your professors and faculty. This can be a big transition because you're not going to be talking to them and communicating with them in the same manner you might have with teachers at your high school or current institutions. It is a different way of doing things. And so there's a lot of ways you can communicate with your professors. And this goes for both big and small institutions. All professors have office hours. Now, how many office hours they have will depend on the institution or the requirements set aside. But all professors will have times where they have open hours where you can come and meet with them. So we encourage you to go attend their office hours. The other thing that would be even better than that is to schedule an appointment. Show them that you would like to sit down and meet with them, and intentionally set time saying, I'm going to come at this day to schedule an appointment. You should visit them often and not just when there are issues. I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist growing up, which clearly I'm not a pharmacist now, but I started in pharmacy school for undergraduate, and organic chemistry was the hardest class that I've ever taken, which is really what made me change my career trajectory. And so I would go and visit my office hours with my professor for organic chemistry every single day. We knew each other by first name after week one. And he knew how to help me navigate through the problems, and we just had extra discussions to help me understand the material. They're willing to do that if you're willing to reach out and talk to them. Now, there is a balance. You need to make sure you have that relationship with your faculty. I asked before I started attending every day, I said, can I come back every day and work with you? And he said, if there's no other students here, I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you every day. Otherwise, let's schedule an appointment. And so there is going to be a balance with how many times you should visit them before it's becoming a bothersome thing for them, and what's a good working relationship. So just ask those questions. How often can I come see you? What kinds of questions can I ask during these appointments? It's also important to come to visit your professor with specific things to discuss. So some of these things are going to be considered issues. So maybe you have questions about course content, or maybe you need additional help and you want to navigate what types of resources they might know. Maybe it's an online additional practice worksheet you can do, or a separate discussion group they know might exist. In some cases, schools will allow you to appeal poor grades if you go and talk to a faculty member. Say, I would like to talk more about this lower grade, and is there anything I can do to make up for it or to appeal it? You can also come with concerns about tests. You want to know maybe the makeup of the test or how the test is going to be given. Those are questions you can ask. And in many cases, they'll talk you through these problems. But the other piece that I love to talk to students about is go and talk to them about their field of expertise. Our colleges and universities are hiring these individuals because they are leading the way in their field. They're extremely knowledgeable and experts in that area. And we want you to have that same experience and expertise from them. So go and talk to them about their interests. How did they get to this position? How did they develop these interests? And what can you do to kind of start to get your interests aligned? Even at big institutions, we encourage these things to happen. Faculty members remember you, and they know what your interests are if you get to know them. And so really spend the time to getting to know them outside of just issues in the class is a great way to do that. It's important to adopt the attitude that professors want to help you. They're not there to be a gatekeeper. They are there to make sure you succeed and are learning the knowledge so that you can be a professional in this field that you're studying. So respect their expertise and have an open mindset that they're there to help you move forward. And that'll change the conversations and the type of working environment you might have. Now, there's several ways to communicate with faculty. So I think it's important to ask what their preferred method of communication might be. Is it via email? Is there a virtual class portal that you should be accessing? Maybe they want you to call and have conversations over the phone, or it's an in-person. This will vary depending on the professor and the institution. Oftentimes you'll get a document when the classes start each semester called a course syllabus. And on that syllabus, it usually lists these information pieces. It'll give the contact information, the office hours, and a layout of the course. So it's important to keep track of that information. They will usually give it to you up front. However, if not, ask them. They want to get to know you and want to help you through this. If you could add to the next slide. So I wanted to give you some email etiquette. I know that emails seem to be really quick. We're very used to maybe text messaging or WhatsApping our friends. And so shorthand does become very easy for us, and we start to use slang between our friends and different words. So it's important to figure out how to transition back into proper emailing with your faculty. And so here are just some pieces of advice. Make sure you include a proper subject line. You have to assume that your professors are also receiving several hundreds, maybe thousands, depending on the size of the institution, of emails, maybe weekly or daily, depending on their subject area. And so making sure that you include the information you need. So it's maybe the class subject or the class course number and help with upcoming exam, or the class subject number and when are open office hours. Just tell them what they can expect so that they can prioritize their email inbox. So the subject line is a great starting point. Also be sure to use your school email address. I know many students like to link their emails with other email accounts. It is best to make sure that your email is coming from the official school email, because sometimes there are filters in place where outside emails can't come in, and so professors may not receive them. So using your school email is also an important way. Addressing the professor or the instructor with the correct greeting is also helpful. So before you email them, it's important to know, are they the professor of the class or the teaching assistant? Are they an instructor? Do they have their PhD or doctorate? And so you can ask these things before you send your first email, is how they would like to be addressed. If they are your professor, then professor so-and-so might be the easiest way to start that email. Be careful to not use too casual or informal language. You are writing a professional email. You want to make sure that they understand that you are prepared to ask these questions, that you are in a university or college program. So while this might seem silly to address, I find myself doing it all the time, even adding a ha-ha at the end of something, which is laughing in the American context in an email, is not appropriate when you're emailing your professor. You may get on a first name basis with them, and they may say, please address me as David instead of Mr. So-and-so. That's okay. Make sure that you are just understanding how that information can be distributed and how you should be addressing them or having those conversations via email. The other important thing is you need to be respectful of their time by being concise and direct. I know it can get overwhelming and you want to make sure you explain your whole situation, but get to the point. Don't write a novel. Really, most will respond in a timely manner as well. So just be cautious of sending emails too late at night or on the weekend without expecting a delay in response. So these are professional staff that work usually Monday through Friday. You will have some really above and beyond professors that will help you through the night closer to an exam, or they may help over the weekend. But have that expectation that the time is you're wanting to be valuable with their time, and you respect their time and their knowledge and expertise. And so be concise, direct, and also understand there may be a delay in response time. The last thing I can mention is be sure to use a proper closing and signature in your email. You want to make sure they know exactly who's emailing them. So make sure you use your first and last name. You can list under that name even what year you are in school or what class you're in so that they don't have any questions. But just be sure to make sure that they know exactly who the email is coming from. So emails can get overwhelming. We also are in an extremely different time right now. And so, yep, you can go to the next slide. And so virtual meetings or virtual conversations are going to have a huge role in what we're doing moving forward. And so I wanted to leave this kind of conversation with how to establish meaningful relationships virtually. So big things to do is figure out how your class is going to be conducted. Are they going to be live where you need to sign in when the class would happen in the United States, or are they going to be asynchronous where you can watch recordings and participate in discussions? This will really depend on how you can participate. If it's a live discussion or a live lecture, make sure you're asking questions via the chat field like you guys have been doing today. Or if they launch polls, participate in that so that they know that you're actively engaged. They're going to take note of how many students are participating. They're going to notice who's asking conversations and driving questions. I would say make sure you balance not sending all of the questions that are right at the top of your mind. Make sure you're asking meaningful questions and continuing the conversation and not derailing the virtual platform so that it is meaningful. If it is after and you are watching them asynchronously or at a different time, make sure that you're going in and participating in those discussion board threads or sending follow-up emails to ask questions. The other great piece of this is you can schedule virtual meetings and you can really have that face-to-face interaction if the professor is willing to do so, which I'm willing to bet many of them are at this point in time. Email, ask about what their availability is and if they're willing to meet virtually or via the phone. That way you can have these conversations and follow-up points. There are going to be lots of virtual opportunities for research and collaboration. Don't be afraid to ask about those things. Make sure they know that you are interested in continuing your education, even if you aren't physically present in class. And so emailing your professors or teaching assistants about any opportunities they may have for you to continue to learn or continue to move through this. I think another big piece is patience and flexibility is going to be key with virtual learning. This is a growing experience. Many universities are shifting to this model after a quick shift in the spring. And so it's important to know that we're going to be working through this. There are going to be things that change during the year. And so keeping patience and flexibility is another tip I can give. So at this time, the last thing I'll bring up is just a brief little introduction to the University of Illinois. So if you want to head to the next slide. The University of Illinois at Urbana Champaign is commonly known as UIUC. We are a public flagship Tier 1 research institution in the great state of Illinois. We are a large institution of around 50,000 students. We offer 150 undergraduate programs in 11 colleges, several hundred graduate and PhD programs as well. I represent the undergraduate side, so I can speak heavily on that if there are questions, but graduate studies, I would encourage you to reach out to the grad college to talk about all of their various entry requirements. Illinois is typically known for our STEM fields, so we have a phenomenal computer science and engineering programs on our campus. And the other big thing that I love that we are so proud of is our international student population. We do have the #1 amount of international students of any US public institution. And so we are welcoming students from over 114 countries every year. And it is definitely an important part of our campus culture and our community. So we welcome students from all over. So at this time, I'm going to pass it off to my next colleague to continue the presentations, and I'll stick around for the Q&A if you have any later. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria and I work at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. My role is the International Recruitment Specialist. So what that means is my job is to recruit students to bring them to the United States, as well as to help the students that are currently in the United States or at our school answer any questions. So my job up today has changed a little bit because we have new regulations that happened last week that were given by the ICE. So we are talking very general today. A lot of schools, including a lot of schools, are working on trying to figure out how to best proceed with all of this and how their school will proceed with the fall semester. So again, be patient with everybody. Hopefully schools will start letting you all know within the next week or so what is happening for the fall semester, and hopefully they'll have more answers. So today we're just going to talk very general about the 3 main types of classes that may happen this fall. That is not face-to-face classes. So there are 3 main classes. There are types of classes that will happen this year, and it all depends on the school that you are going to attend. So the first one would be online classes. remote learning and hybrid classes. So the remote learning and hybrid classes may be a newer topic to you all, so we're going to explain all of these into more detail. So what are online classes? Or another word for online classes may be asynchronized learning. And a lot of times, a lot of students choose to do this, especially if they're outside of the United States, due to the time zone. And I'll get into that in just a minute. So what that means is that for your classes for online, there's no scheduled time to meet with your instructor or to go to class. So you don't have to go to class Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. What that means is that you're giving assignments or readings or lectures, and then you have due dates to submit your assignments. And all of your work for your online classes, because everything is completely online, you don't do anything face-to-face, it's all turned in online, usually through a student portal. At Sinclair, we have the My Sinclair, or the eLearn, or Blackboard, some schools may use. And all of it depends on your school. So it's really important that time management that's been talked about earlier is taken very seriously, because again, all of the work is turned in online, and that's how it is. And you're having to manage your time very carefully during the online classes. Also, the lectures that you may normally receive when you're sitting in the classroom, they're not going to be the same. You may have to do a lot more reading of the textbooks, so make sure you buy your textbooks. And then also, or you might have some video recordings. So I was finishing my master's up this past year, and for my master's, my teacher, we did have to read a lot, but she also recorded like a few videos that were about 5 minutes explaining something. So, those are some things that to look into or to look at whenever you're maybe taking some online classes. And then for remote learning, so remote learning is also could be known as synchronized learning. At Sinclair, we use the word remote learning, but I know other schools use synchronized learning. So what that means is that you will have to be online at a specific time every day. So maybe you have to be online Tuesdays and Thursdays in front of your computer with the video on, from 10 to 12 p.m. And your lecture is given through this online portal, such as Zoom or another online platform that may be used. And then again, all of your work is turned in online. So it's not going to the classroom. It's not I'm gonna go to my professor's office during the week at a specific time. It may be I just need to send them a message, or maybe your professor, if they need to explain something, maybe they'll set up a time for you to call them or to do a video chat to kind of get your answers to your questions that you have. I used this a lot during my master's because my master's was in Iowa and I was living in Ohio. And for those of you that don't know, Iowa and Ohio are like 9 hours apart at least, and if you drive. So I was not able to drive there every day to ask my questions. So doing the video calls was very easy and very helpful for me. So that's a lot of the remote learning, or in general remote learning. And then there's also what's called hybrid classes. And so for the hybrid classes, a lot of what it is you may have class. There's really two different models of this. So so every school is different, but in general, or at least at Sinclair, you may, for example, your hybrid classes, you may have to, let's say your class is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe you have to be in your classroom on Mondays during the lecture. And then maybe on Wednesday, you have to complete your lecture in person or online through the online platform. And then maybe Friday, you have to alternate. So those are some examples. Again, every school is different, and especially for the fall semester due to the COVID pandemic, they all look different. So just making sure you're aware of that, just because, you know, for social distancing, you can't have that many people, so many people in a room or whatever. So just be aware of how that is. And then for your hybrid classes, work may be turned in online or it could be turned in person. I think a lot of it will depends on the faculty and how comfortable they feel with this topic or how they feel with that. A lot of times if you write essays, they're probably going to have you turn it in online. And there's a way to do that through the eLearn or the Blackboard or the Canvas, however your school does it. And then for the hybrid classes, most of your lectures will be online, but you will also have additional online readings, or you may have to do a class session through the online platform. And these are the three main types of classes that will probably happen for the fall semester across the United States. And again, due to the new regulations that came out last week, make sure that you're talking with the international office or your academic advisors, and that you're looking at your class schedule to see what your school will do, because again, every school is different. So for example, at Sinclair, we're on the hybrid model for fall 2020, but maybe some schools are only on the online or only remote learning. So make sure that you're talking with them so you have a better idea of how to proceed in for the next semester, and that you are prepared for that as well. So that's about all I have for the online model. So I'll talk a little bit about Sinclair. So Sinclair is a fully accredited, comprehensive 2-year public college. And we have over 300 international students from more than 40 different countries. And so we are one of the largest schools in the community colleges in the US, because we do have more than 30,000 students on our campus each year. And our international office, we help students from the admissions process all the way through graduation. So we help with all of that. We can go to the next one, sorry. So at Sinclair, we have a lot of different programs. We have over 250 degree and certificate programs. So if you want to study something, we may have it. We probably do. But some things that you can do is you can study, for example, a bachelor's degree in aviation. We have 2+2 parallel degree programs or transfer models. So we have a lot of students that study at Sinclair for 2 years, receive their associate's degree, and then transfer to university for the last 2 years of their bachelor's degree. We also have the career and technical certificates and associate degrees, which help students to study something short term and then start in their career field. We also have English as a second language and study abroad opportunities. And then for our application process, for those of you who are new, for those of you who have been accepted to schools, this does not pertain to you. But for those of you who are still deciding on a school, our application process is fairly easy. You would just submit the online application, and then we would need a copy of your passport, transcripts from your high school, and they do have to be translated into English if they're not already. And then we also need a bank statement or a financial guarantee, because we do have a lot of government-sponsored students. And then if you do not want to take ESL, you would need to submit an English proficiency score. Or if you want to take ESL, you don't have to submit that. So, yeah. And then if you have any questions, feel free to connect with us. We are available on WhatsApp or Facebook, WeChat, and we have email. We also have phone numbers, so feel free to message us or ask us any questions, and we're happy to help.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Jess, for your information. So now we can actually take questions again. And our Education USA advisor from Jordan, Rita, will start with the first session. with the first question. I'm sorry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our presenters as well. The first question is it possible for international students to study medicine in the US?
So this is a really tricky question, and how we handle it. So I would say my advice for most students that are wanting to come study medicine in the United States is traditionally schools are set up for US residents or permanent citizens to have access to the medical schools. Not all, so I want to be very clear, it's not all medical programs are like this. However, a big majority only allow US citizens or permanent residents to apply for the medical school. So we advise students to look at, do you want to go into research or into PhD work potentially within those areas related to medicine? Those frequently are attended by international students. But if you would like to be a medical doctor, our recommendation is to attend medical school in your own country and come during your residency for your medical degree. Residency programs are open to all students of all nationalities, and so we would encourage students to come back for residency or fellowship in the medical field.
Thank you. We have another question about community colleges, if they all require an English language exam like the TOEFL or any other exams, and if they have an articulation agreement with 4 years colleges or universities.
So for community colleges, it depends on the school. What normally happens for a lot of schools, and I do know this happens on the West Coast, a lot of schools will accept you if you do not have an English proficiency score. What they'll do is they'll accept you as an ESL student. And then when you get to campus, you may have the opportunity to submit an English proficiency score, or you may have to take a placement test. And based on that test, will depend on if you can start your academics or your ESL. At Sinclair, if you want to start in your academic program, you do have to submit an English proficiency score. For us, Duolingo is very popular now because it's cheap and students can take it at home. But you can also submit other programs as well. And we do have a lot of articulation agreements. So schools, all community colleges across the US in general, do have a lot of articulation agreements. They may have more articulation agreements in the state that they are located. So in Ohio, a lot of our articulation agreements are with schools in Ohio, most of them. But we do have students that even if they don't want to stay in Ohio, maybe they want to go to Houston or Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, they can do that as well. So they're not limited by those articulation agreements, but they definitely help in the admissions process, make your transfer a lot easier.
Our next question is about online master's degree. So if a student is completing an online master's degree, would it be counted if they want to proceed with completing PhD study in the United States?
I think this answer, again, depends on the institution and where that degree is being done. If it's an online US institution and you're wanting to continue at another institution of higher ed in the United States, potentially. In most cases, though, it depends on if they're in the same field or in different fields. Some schools may require you to continue taking other courses. So this is a question I would ask each graduate program, what types of classes they would consider. Most cases for PhD work, they only transfer 30 credits from a master's program into a PhD coursework. So potentially, but maybe not all of those classes would count.
And we have another question about adjusting to campus environment. If someone's mental health is severely affected by college workload and such, would the university cooperate if the student decides to take an academic break? Would that affect their financial aid?
This is also going to depend per institution policy. My best advice is to work closely with the International Student and Scholar Services Office on your campus. There are medical leave absences that they can submit for your visa paperwork to make sure there's not a disruption in that process. Depending on the financial situation, there may be a way to withdraw for a semester or take a semester due to medical reasons. So potentially, but not necessarily something that can be given as a direct answer for all universities without asking their divisions closely.
Another question, if a student gets admission from a certain university, does the university help the student to obtain a visa?
So for that answer, it's a little tricky, but the general answer is we do help the students. We send them the admission document, the I-20, which is needed in order to get your visa. So without that document, you cannot get your visa. I do know every school is different. So some schools, they help you. They may send you like a list of tips of what to do or what not to do at the interview or things to remember. Some schools may have the opportunity for you to meet with them on video chat to kind of practice. Maybe they'll try to be the consular officer and then ask you questions, and then they'll give you feedback. But my biggest thing is every school is different, so we help you, but we can't give you the visa. We're not the ones that are able to do that.
Thank you. We have another question about the importance of letters of recommendations in the application folder.
So at the University of Illinois for undergraduate studies, we will not consider any letters of recommendation. So for us, they're not important and they will not be considered if they are submitted per our admission policy. Now for graduate studies, each program has different requirements at our university. So in some cases, letters of recommendation are required from certain individuals, but for undergraduate studies, it's not considered at all.
Thank you so much. I think we have answered all of the questions in the chat box. Again, thank you so much to our advisors, to our presenters for today's session. And please remember that we have another session next week, on Wednesday, July 29th, with another 4 university representatives, and we will discuss the topics that you can see on the screen. So if you did not register yet for the session, please do so. If you need any information related to Education USA and studying in the US, you can contact the advising center in your country. Just go to the Education USA website, educationusa.state.gov, for any information related to studying in the US. Melissa, would you like to say anything before we end this session?
Sure, just a couple of final thoughts and a big thank you, of course, again, to Wes, Megan, Jess, and Maria. Thank you so much. This is all very useful information for our students. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things, obviously, that you've heard throughout the webinar today. There's been a lot of tips that apply not just while you're starting out your program, but during this time of waiting and trying to figure out what's going to happen. So there are a lot of resources, a lot of opportunities for you to reach out for support from the universities as well as from your Education USA advising centers. Think about the communication that you are having. So again, the way that you express your messages, the email etiquette should be something you keep in mind. Not just when you're writing to your professors, but also to the advisors, to any of your international student office contacts, to make sure that your questions are coming across quite clear so that you can get the answers you're looking for. You've heard often, there's a lot of it depends. That's the beauty of the US higher educational system. There is a lot of variety, there is a lot of option available, and with that, that means there's a lot of difference. The Education USA advisors can help you navigate some of that. But again, the very specific university questions need to be answered by those specific universities so that you understand whether they require a recommendation letter or not, whether TOEFL and IELTS or Duolingo are accepted or not. Those are the types of things that we can help you navigate. So again, take advantage of all of the virtual opportunities to help you prepare, to help you think about different topics, different things that maybe you weren't aware of. and utilize all of your resources. So again, congratulations to all the students that do know that they have their acceptances, and for those still waiting or planning, you know, we're here to help you, we're here to work with you and answer any questions that you may have to get you to the program you want to join. So thank you, those are my concluding remarks. We hope to see you at our next session. And a thank you to all of the advisors for their wonderful facilitation today as well and getting all of this set up.